Now, you talk about an honest public debate. One of those areas where the Conservatives have not been honest is immigration. Now, you've been campaigning on this issue since 2004.
Yep.
You have become the synonymous politician almost with that particular issue, and it's the issue that really helped UKIP rise to power in 2014, that helped deliver the Brexit vote in 2016, and obviously after 2016 voters felt that they'd been listened to in a way. They felt that by leaving the European Union, finally we can take back control of our borders. The Conservatives today...
And they felt safe in 2019 with Boris on this issue too.
The Conservatives today, they argue that Brexit was about control and not about numbers. What do you say to that?
You know, this is your classic sort of public school, you know, Lord Hannon type argument. But no, immigration wasn't it? No, I go to the council estates in the Midlands and the North or anywhere in the country. Speak to families who saw the wages compressed through massive levels of semi-skilled and unskilled labour coming into the country. Speak to people whose kids can't go to the local primary school because it's full. Because we have a birth explosion, the likes of which we've never seen in this country in our history. And vast numbers of those are born to foreign-born mothers. Doesn't make them all bad. I'm talking about numbers here. Talk to anybody who can't get a GP appointment. Talk to anybody who can't drive on a motorway. The population's increased by 8 million since 2002, and 84% of that is directly because of immigration. Labour started it, the Tories have continued it, and the reason they started voting for UKIP in huge numbers, the reason that the whole rebellion started but led to Brexit, to a huge Tory majority, is people said, enough. And what has happened in 2019, we now see that last year 1.1 million visas, legal visas, were given out. We're witnessing, I get emails every day from people just saying my neighbourhood is now unrecognisable. And you know, when you live in a street where people speak the same language, where you have similar cultural interests, similar shared histories, there will of course be some bad apples, but there's a degree of self-regulation that goes on as the community itself has an identity. I don't believe in this rubbish of there's no such thing as society. Thatcher was completely wrong or misquoted about that. There really is. There really is. When you replace a street like that with a street in which no one knows the names of their neighbours, they've never spoken to them, where many in that street do not have shared histories, do not have shared cultures, do not have shared interests, socially, sporting-wise, whatever it may be, where many in that street don't even speak the same language, whose kids don't play together in the street or after school, then you have a community that cares less about each other and more about itself, and is more prepared to turn a blind eye to litter, bad language, graffiti, crime, whatever it may be. And I know I'll be condemned for saying this, but I'm going to say it. You break down our communities, you break down the civilized order that we've been used to, and you have a recipe for lawlessness, a recipe for an unhappy society. And when you have immigration running legally and illegally at the levels you've got, there is no prospect, no hope of community cohesion, of integration actually going on. And since 2019, we've seen legal numbers just spiral. I mean, forget about your kids buying a house. That ain't ever going to happen. All these aspirations are never going to happen. And health-wise, well, if you can't afford private insurance, you're in big trouble. Big trouble. I'm about to do a story tonight on GB News about mouth cancer. You know, we are now at the highest we've been ever because of lack of dental services that have taken place during the pandemic and since. Just one little example, but to tens of thousands of people, you know, this is very, very, very real. And then we witness the humiliation of what is happening in the English Channel and the displacement of those people in hotels all over the country. I went to Sunderland. People were furious. What the hell is going on? And now in the last few weeks, the final humiliation. Huge numbers of Albanian criminals with their prison haircuts, their prison tattoos, coming into Britain to join the criminal gangs? How many more moped muggings? How many more knifings? How many more levels of gun crime do you need to understand the Conservatives have completely failed Britain?
To say any of what you've just said is extremely difficult, and I think in some ways courageous, because the debate over immigration has been one which has been toxic for the last 20 years. You've been on the receiving end of that. You've experienced personally what it feels like to talk about this issue.
To be vilified.
To be vilified. And it seemed for a long time that immigration wasn't talked about. After Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech.
He completely got that wrong. It was completely over the top. He'd given a similar speech in Walsall a few weeks before that hadn't been noticed. He was trying too hard. And he actually made the subject difficult to talk about for years and years.
And today, I feel perhaps that sense of not being able to talk about immigration has crept back in the last few years. Since the Brexit vote, since the issue was allegedly written off, that was it, immigration was done. Now again, you can't really talk about it. Do you agree with that?
Well, I'm sorry, no, it's back. It's back. The public weren't talking about it because they thought it had been dealt with. You're quite right. You said that a few minutes ago. It is now back. It is now front and centre. It is, particularly in the Red Wall, the second most important issue behind, obviously, the cost of living crisis. This issue alone will cost them the next election.
I want to talk about the political implications of immigration. Now, you've talked about the economic and societal consequences of it. The political consequences. Are we going to see an insurgency? You referred to this in your recent Telegraph article.
I did, yeah. I mean, it's quite funny, really. I mean, for all the vilification I got, actually, I pretty much single-handedly killed off the British National Party and their rise. In sort of 06, 7, 8, 9, the BNP were on the march in many, many northern towns, winning council seats, you name it, even getting 2 MEPs elected under PR to the European Parliament. I saw Nick Griffin off because I said to BNP, I looked down the barrel at PNP voters and said, look, if you're voting BNP because you're unhappy, but you don't want to vote for an overtly outright racist party, come and vote for me. That was my pitch. That was my appeal. And do you know what? It worked. It worked. I got 2/3 of BNP voters to vote UKIP. The third, who absolutely believed in what they believed in, and we can condemn that, but that's the world we live in, stuck with them. But that was the end of it. And there is a political vacuum that has opened up again in British politics on the right. And I suspect somebody will fill it. I suspect whoever comes along and fills that gap will make me look like a Notting Hill metropolitan member of the Liberal elite, because I suspect that's what's going to happen. And it'll be nasty, it'll be ugly. And here's the remarkable thing. The insurgency, the UKIP insurgency, built on patriotism, built on national democracy, built on national self-interest, built on border controls and the right levels of immigration within our communities and our society. It all happened during relatively benign economic circumstances. Yes, we had the great financial crash of 2008, but it didn't really affect people. Government just increased debt, bailed the banks out, and everybody carried on. Hardly anyone lost their jobs. Inflation didn't rocket. Interest rates did. All those things. And to have such a fundamental constitutional change take place in economic peacetime was a pretty remarkable thing. And now we're going into, recession, who knows, maybe depression. It's not completely impossible. We are going to see, if the D word happens, we will see very radical and possibly violent political change occurring within Europe and the UK. Now, I don't think any outside party in the UK can win power. The system is rigged against anyone new coming in. You can't raise money without the big donors being subject to inheritance tax. There's a first past the post system. There's a crooked postal voting system. So it may be that a political insurgency doesn't win many seats in Parliament, but it will once again fundamentally reshape conservatism.